Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and this is my 10 least favorite Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. So The Next Generation, for me, is my favorite all-time Star Trek show, and I guess one of my favorite all-time shows, period, if we're being honest here. Next Generation is my baby. The Next Generation is why I am into Star Trek as much as I am today. I mean, I was introduced to the original series first, but The Next Generation is why I became a Star Trek fanatic. But with that said, that doesn't mean that there aren't episodes that I hate, that I really can't stand, that drive me crazy, and that's why I'm going to talk about 10 of them. There's actually more than 10 episodes that I hate in The Next Generation. It was really difficult to whittle it down to 10, but I did it. And please feel free to share your 10 least favorite or any of your least favorite episodes of The Next Generation in the comments below, because they're going to be different from mine, most likely. Maybe some of the ones that you say will be ones that I really wanted to put on the list but didn't quite make the cut. Or maybe you'll say some that I like. But that's okay. It's all fun. I can tell you right now that my number one least favorite episode is nobody else's number one least favorite episode. Or at least not anyone I've ever talked to ever yet. I seem to be on an island with really, really hating this particular episode, but that's okay. That's what makes this all fun. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the 10 episodes I personally really cannot stand. Number 10! And coming in at number 10 on my least favorite list is Eye of the Beholder. So this is the first of 2 Counselor Troy appearances on this list, and I wanted to include 2 more Counselor Troy-centric episodes that I could not quite fit. I was playing a game of which Counselor Troy episodes to include and which to leave off of my list of 10. It was very difficult, and I ended up leaving off The Child and Man of the People, which are also very bad episodes. I'm sorry, I really want to like Counselor Troy episodes, but they just suck. She's just a terrible lead character. She's really obnoxious. And this one reminds me a little bit of Man of the People, where she gets jealous of her lover, and it's just really obnoxious. It's really difficult to watch. It's really dumb. And if anyone ever asks you, why do people hate the Worf and Counselor Troy relationship in Season 7? You don't have to answer in words. Just show them this episode. It is a prime example of such. And I'm just so done with Counselor Troy episodes by the time we get to Season 7. Although I'm actually not done with Counselor Troy episodes for this list, as she will return a little bit later on.
Number 9. Number 9. Number 9.
At number 9, Fistful of Data's from Season 6. Now, when I included this episode on my list of 10 worst episodes from my previous channel, I got a lot of pushback on it in the comments, and I also got a lot of pushback on Spectre of the Gun from the original series, so I'm assuming there's just a lot of Western fans out there, and fair enough to you, but let me just tell you about myself. I hate Westerns. I always have, and I always will. When I was a little kid, my parents tried to push them on me because they loved them when they were kids, but I didn't. I thought they were boring and stupid. And today I have all kinds of other problems with Westerns that I am not even going to get into in this video. But suffice to say, I hate them and I don't want them all up in my sci-fi. I hate this episode, I hate Spectre of the Gun, and I do like the show Westworld overall. However, season 1 for me is my least favorite season because it focuses too much on the Western aspect. I prefer it when they start really getting into the sci-fi of it all more in seasons 2 and 3, and I realize I'm the only one in the world who feels that way, but I don't want Westerns all up in my sci-fi. They should stay as separate genres. Also, I love Brent Spiner generally. I think he's great as Data, but whenever he tries to step outside of Data, especially if he's trying to do funny voices and different characters, he's very, very painful to watch. I'm embarrassed for him in this episode. It's cringeworthy. I'm sorry.
Number 8.
Sticking with the Data theme at number 8, Data lore from season 1. But unlike the previous entry to this list, this one is not on here because of anything to do with Brent Spiner or Data or lore. That's all well and good. This episode is on here because of Wesley Mary Sue Crusher. This is the absolute worst Wesley Crusher Mary Sue episode. It represents the terrible writing of season 1. It is one of the worst written episodes as it comes off as very cartoonish. In this episode, everyone on the Enterprise are rendered complete morons except for Wesley. It's almost as if lore shot them all with some kind of a dumb ray, making them all really stupid except for Wesley Crusher. As in this episode, lore is pretending to be Data, and it is the most obvious thing in the world that it is not Data. It is so ridiculous and nobody notices except for Wesley. In this scene you see on the screenshot, you see how Brent Spiner is smiling here. Well, he's supposed to be Data, and he's smiling at the view screen and saying to the crystalline entity, "Beautiful, isn't it?" And no one notices. It drives me insane. Again, one of the poorest written episodes in the entire series, and an embarrassment on the franchise, in my opinion. And it's a shame because I do like lore when he returns in the season 4 episode Brothers, but not so much here. I miss the honky tonks, Dairy Queen, and number 7. Number 7. Number 7, Imaginary Friend from Season 5. Season 5, for whatever weird reason, was the season of children. It had a lot of children-centric episodes in that particular season. Now, that's all well and good if the main child character that we're following in the episode is someone like Alexander, who is a character we care about. He's Worf's son. So presumably we care about what happens to him in that episode. Whereas in this episode it's a random child whose parents we don't really even know, and we're asked to care about her for some weird reason, and we're asked to follow her in a really dumb plot about an alien pretending to be her imaginary friend. But this episode makes this list primarily because of the worst Captain Picard speech of all time that happens at the end of this episode. And I love me a good Captain Picard speech. There are some epic ones throughout this series, and that just makes it that much more painful when he gives us a bad one. His speech in this episode basically boils down to, "Oh children, if you only believe in fairies, Tinkerbell will still live." I mean, that's not an exact word-for-word interpretation of what he said, but you know, that's basically what he said.
Number 6.
At number 6, The Loss from Season 4. And here is the promised second Counselor Troy episode. And this is the worst of all Counselor Troy episodes. This is the episode where she loses her powers and just turns into a complete bitch. and is completely rude to everyone just because she's pissed off that she's no longer superior to them anymore. And she tells them that pretty much directly, that they don't understand what she's going through because they're mere humans that don't have her superior powers of empathy. It is so obnoxious. And she is cruelest of all to her so-called best friend, Dr. Beverly Crusher. And then in the end, never apologizes to Dr. Crusher. She basically just says, you know what, we're good now because I'm superior to you again. Like, just F off, bitch. I mean, seriously, Dr. Crusher should have bitch slapped her across the head. Like, dude, Counselor Troy is so obnoxious in this episode. Number 5. Number 5, Code of Honor from Season 1. This episode is infamous for being the most racist episode in all of Star Trek, though I personally would put it at a tie with the Paradise Syndrome from the original series because racism against Native Americans still counts as racism. However, that does not take away from the racist nature of this episode, as it portrays an extraordinarily painful to watch stereotype of an ancient African culture, I guess is what this is supposed to be. But it is awful. And you know, the thing that actually offended me most when watching this episode recently in my rewatch I did a few years ago is that it kind of leaves the viewer with the impression that the only way for our white crew of the Enterprise to encounter a black society is to travel to this distant, faraway planet. You know, it's not like that exists on Earth or anything like that. And this is unfortunately amplified by the fact that Geordi LaForge is the only black face we see on the Enterprise in Season 1. I mean, technically Michael Dorn is a black actor, but he's playing a Klingon and not an African American. So, this episode gives me knots in my stomach and is very difficult to watch. And I plan to not ever watch it ever again as long as I live, if I can help it. And at number 4, my 4th least favorite episode of Star Trek The Next Generation is Season 2's Manhunt. I am generally not a huge fan of Loxana Troy episodes, though I will say, to be fair, the Deep Space Nine ones are worse than the Next Generation ones, but this is the absolute worst Loxana Troy episode of The Next Generation. It is only her second appearance, and I don't really know why they felt the need to bring her back. I guess she must have been super popular in Season 1, or maybe it's the fact that Majel Barrett was married to Gene Roddenberry. I don't know. I mean, she does the computer voice. Isn't that enough for her? This episode really had no plot. It just seemed to be an excuse to have Loxana Troy on there. She's going through some form of Beta Z Pone de Fire, and she's going around trying to have sex with everyone the whole episode, and otherwise there is no plot. And if she's going through this Beta Z Pone de Fire, why in the hell would she not just go to, I don't know, Beta Z? Why would she go to the Enterprise, where no one's going to be interested in her? If she goes to Beta Z, I'm sure she would find a nice Beta Z man who wants her. So this whole thing is ridiculous. It also throws in a pointless Dixon Hill subplot for absolutely no reason.
Number 3. Yay, number 3.
And number 3, we're sticking with Season 2 for Shades of Grey. This is the infamous flashback episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. And you know what? I almost considered just leaving this off the list entirely because I just feel like by giving it attention, it validates this as a legitimate episode, whereas maybe if you just ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist, it'll just go away. But unfortunately, it does exist. It's on Netflix, it's on Paramount Plus. I'm sure it's still on somebody's VHS tape somewhere out there as well. So you can't hide from it. It's there if you're going to binge watch The Next Generation in its entirety, as I did do a few years ago. You can't avoid it. It exists, unfortunately, and you all know what this episode is about. I'm not going to go into any more details than that. It is what it is.
There's two of them. Number 2.
Number 2 is Subrosa. I feel like I keep using the word infamous a bunch in this video, but this is the infamous Dr. Crusher having sex with a space ghost episode, and to me is representative of the diminished quality of the writing in season 7. I know my brother disagrees with me on that, but to me, I look at it and it's objectively lower quality overall in season 7, with of course a couple of exceptions, All Good Things being the most notable of those. But this episode, to me, it just makes me wonder why. Why did anyone think that this was a good idea? Some might say it's so bad that it's good, that it's funny, but I don't find it funny. I just find it really annoying. And another episode in which I hope to never have to suffer through ever again. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for, my number 1 least favorite episode of Star Trek Next Generation. And my number 1 least favorite episode is The Game from season 5. See, I told you you wouldn't hate it as much as I do. Nobody does, and that's fine, that's fine. I mean, I also haven't really heard anyone say that this was a particularly great episode or anything, but most people are like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, Ashley Judd is in it. Ashley Judd is cute. Yeah, Ashley Judd's cute, but this episode still sucks. I think this is another example of a genre bias, such as what I talked about with the Westerns earlier. This is kind of that invasion of the body snatchers trope, which is a trope I really despise. I feel that it is repetitive. I feel that it is unoriginal. It is done the same way every single time. It was never really that interesting to me to begin with. And this is the absolute worst example I've ever seen of an already really bad trope. And what really drives me crazy about this episode is that some of our characters, particularly Worf and Picard, are completely out of character in this episode. And you might be saying, but Alyssa, they put on this game that brainwashes them, so of course they're out of character. No. I'm not talking about after they put on the headset and get brainwashed. I'm talking about before, because there is 0% chance Worf or Captain Picard would ever in a million trillion years ever agree to put this headset on and play a silly game unless they were forced to. And you notice how both Worf and Picard were seduced by the game off screen because they could not possibly show it to you on screen because it would look absolutely ridiculous and make no sense for their characters. Can you imagine Captain Picard saying, oh sure, I'll put down my dusty old Shakespeare book and put on a headset to play a child's game? Can you imagine in a million years? No, he would never do that. So that's why it has to happen off screen. And that's not even getting into the fact that they explained that this game it connects to your visual receptors and Geordi is blind and it affects Geordi somehow. It makes no sense. And by the way, Wesley Crusher has left the goddamn show, so he has to come back to be a Mary Sue again and save the whole ship. I thought we got rid of him! So this is why I hate this show, and that is totally fine if not anyone else hates it as much as I do. I don't care. This will always be my number 1 least favorite episode of The Next Generation. Thank you so much for watching my 10 least favorite episodes of The Next Generation. If you like that, give it a like, subscribe, and check out my video for my 20 favorite episodes of The Next Generation, as well as the least favorite and favorite of the original series. I've also got some stuff on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and some videos where I tell my transition story if you're interested in that sort of thing. So please subscribe, check out all of that, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.